Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Quick Bricks NBA DFS podcast brought to you by the good guys over at Fantasy Degens. As always, Sean Mitchell here at SMitchell17 on the Twitter. Hopefully everybody's enjoying your Thursday. Today is the next to last day of January 30th. We once again have another 6-game slate on tap for tonight. Hopefully you guys had a little bit of luck yesterday. Hopefully some of the tidbits on the timeline helped. Hopefully the pod helped. Some of the value hit, some of it didn't. Really got a big game from the late night hammer there with the Portland and Houston game. I guess that wasn't the late night hammer, but nonetheless, it was Dame time once again. Russell Westbrook had a really big game as expected. Pretty decent night. Hopefully some of you guys made some cash. So going into today, of course, 6 games. I have a couple decent games on the docket today. Not just anything totally crazy. Let's go ahead and hop right into it. Game number 1, we have Toronto going into Cleveland to take on the Cavs. Toronto minus 10.5 here on the road, 221 on the total. Toronto not over the last 10 games in terms of pace. Cleveland is 19th, so a little bit of a pace-up spot here for Cleveland. Hornets going into Washington to take on the Wizards in what will likely be the chalk game of the night, for good reason. Washington has played zero defense. They run with one of the fastest pace in the league. And this is a massive pace-up spot for Charlotte, who's ran with the 30th. Excuse me. Charlotte has ran with the 30th, dead last pace in terms of their last 10. Washington is 5th. So, Charlotte is going to have to run at a really fast pace to keep up with Washington here. Washington loves to push the pace. Obviously, we see that in terms of their pace numbers. So that one's going to be interesting. Washington minus 4.5 here at home, 228 on that total. 76ers at the Hawks in game number 3, another game that actually has the highest total on the board. Philadelphia minus 7.5 here on the road, 228.5 on that total. 76ers ranked 24th in terms of pace over their last 10. Atlanta is 2nd. Atlanta runs very, very fast. Game number 4, we have the Warriors going into Boston to take on the Celtics. Boston is a 12-point home favorite here. Don't have a total, waiting on the Jason Tatum news. But we have Golden State running with the 8th fastest pace over their last 10. And we have Boston who's running with the 10th over their last 10. So, 2 teams here, both inside the top 10 over their last 10 games in terms of pace. Both been running decently fast. So this one's a really interesting game. However, Boston is a pretty decent sized favorite here. But Golden State hasn't exactly been getting blown out by people lately. So that one's pretty interesting. If Tatum comes back, that one will likely decrease a lot of the ownership in this game, I believe. However, everybody loves to play the Celtics for some reason, so probably not. Last 2 games on the board here, we have the Jazz on a back-to-back going into Denver. Very tough game for the Jazz here on a back-to-back going into Denver, going into altitude to take on the Nuggets. Denver is only a minus 1.5 here, home favorite, 216 on the total. Utah coming in as the 20th fastest team over their last 10. Denver is the 27th. So what you have here, of course, is 2 teams that do not exactly run fast. You have a really pretty low total on this one. It's one of the lower totals we've seen in the past few weeks. We haven't really seen any totals under 210 in a while. This one is getting pretty close, 215.5. So keep that one in mind. And then for your late night hammer, we have the Kings, who just got blown out last night against OKC, going into the Staples Center to take on the Clippers. So Clippers minus 12 here at home. Nothing to see really. Sacramento 16th in terms of pace over their last 10. Clippers 14th. Clippers likely getting Paul George back tonight, which is bad news for the Kings as well. But I like a few spots in that game as well, and we'll talk about why. So let's head over into the positionals. We'll talk about the point guard spot first, obviously. We'll kick it off here with Mr. Trae Young at 9.9. I know it is Philadelphia, but he is at home. He's put up 77.5 and 73 fantasy points in his last 2 at home. He's put up 63 or more in his last 3 or 4 at home. In one game this season against Philadelphia already, played 35 minutes, put up 25 points, 4 rebounds, 9 assists, had a 36.7% usage rate, and he has also carried a 33.7% usage rate in his last 3 at home. So where many will likely fade Trae Young due to the fact that he's playing in Philadelphia, I think this is a great spot to play Trae Young. He's still under 10K. He's been absolutely smashing at home lately, and his usage rate is through the roof. So I don't expect that to change any at all depending on who they're playing. That's just not going to happen. So play some Trae Young. It is a smaller slate, 6 games, so you're going to have to really hit those elite players. Going next, we have D'Angelo Russell at 8K. Only bumped his price about $400. He's went over 50 fantasy points in his last 4 or 5. 32.8% usage rate over his last 5. 26 or more real points in his last 5 as well, and he's taken at least 21 or more field goal attempts in his last 5 games. A couple of those, he's taken 25 or more. If D'Angelo Russell is going to continue to take 20-plus shots a game, I want every single bit of it. I mean, I know that he's going into Boston tonight. I know it's not exactly the best setting. It's not exactly the best spot, but, Boston has given up some decent games to point guards. It is in TD Gardens where D'Angelo Russell probably would want to show out a little bit. We know D'Angelo Russell, so don't be afraid to pay up for him as well. And then on the flip side, you have Kemba Walker here at 7.9. Golden State is allowing the 5th most of that point guard spot over the last 10. We know D'Angelo Russell doesn't play really much any D at all. He has put up 54.3 and 60.5 in his last 2 of 3. 31.8% usage rate over his last 3 as well. If Tatum happens to sit once again, I believe that Kemba at 7.9 is just going to easily be a lock, especially a cash game lock at that price. Kyle Lowry at 7.5. Cleveland allowing the 10th most of that point guard spot. We know that they're not very good against the point guard spot already. He's put up 40 or more in his last 3 of 6 in 2 games versus Cleveland this year already. He's put up 22 points, 2.5 rebounds, 9.5 assists with a 25.4% usage rate. Excuse me. And he's averaging 36 minutes a game. So Kyle Lowry at 7.5 I think is just kind of a ridiculous price. The guy is a potential triple-double on almost any night. He has one of the best matchups on the board against Cleveland here. I know that they're a big favorite, but nonetheless, it's just a good spot. So Kyle Lowry at 7.5 I'm totally fine with. Terry Rozier, the guy that kind of got mixed up in all the mix the other day with the Devontae Graham news being ruled out and then being rolled back in with illness. And then Terry Rozier goes for 40+. Put up 46.5 fantasy points against the Knicks last game. Gets a nice Washington pace here. Pace up spot for Charlotte, obviously. It's a great spot. He's 7.3. He's put up 37 or more fantasy points in his last 3 of 4. 21.7% in his last 4 on the road. So pretty good spot here for Terry Rozier. Monte Morris at 5.3, kind of getting on the lower tier. 34 and 35 minutes in his last 2 games. 36.8 and 25.8 fantasy points in those. Returns back home tonight. Gets Utah here on a back-to-back. He's scored double digit real points in his last 3 of 4 and 4 or more assists. So Monte's been playing pretty good in the absence of Jamal Murray. He should continue to see really good minutes off the bench. So he has solidified that role obviously until Jamal returns. So him at 5.3, I don't think I mind as bad if you need to go there. Moving over to the shooting guard spot, Brad Beal at 9.4. I don't really have to talk much about him. 51 or more in his last 4 straight. Over 36 real points in his last 4. 37.9% usage rate over his last 5. That's all I have to say about Brad Beal. You guys know about Bill. Fred VanVleet at 7.7. We know Cleveland struggles against shooting guards as well. 10 or more total steals. No, sorry. He has 10 total steals in his last 5 games. 40 or more in his last 3 of 5. 35 versus Cleveland last time they played at home here a couple of games ago earlier this season. That's right. 7 or more assists in his last 3 of 5. Sorry. He's put up 40 or more fantasy points in his last 3 of 5 on the road. That's what I had wrote down. My fault. Apologies. So Fred VanVleet continues to be a pretty good play nightly. Jaylen Brown at 7.4, especially if Jason Tatum does happen to sit once again. 37 or more in his last 3 of 4. 20-plus real in his last 4 straight. 36 or more minutes in his last 3 of 4, carrying almost a 24% usage rate at 23.7 over his last 3. So Jaylen Brown's been playing really well as well. Obviously, if Tatum sits, then obviously he's going to be a pretty nice play once again. Obviously, he's a decent play anyway. Excuse me, still dealing with some congestion, runny nose, good mess. Good winter weather. So, moving on. Donovan Mitchell on a back-to-back here. His price went down quite a bit. Obviously, it's not the best matchup here against Denver on the road. But nonetheless, he's put up 40.3, 36, 62.5, and 33.4 on his last 4 road games, carrying a 32.7% usage rate over his last 4 on the road as well. He's taken 20, 25, and 25 field goal attempts in his last 3. Look, if we're going to get that Donovan Mitchell, that is shooting 20 to 25 times a game, I don't care what his price is, especially at 7.2. I don't care where he's playing. Kind of like DAR. If he's going to get that kind of volume, you just have to plug him. I mean, you just have to plug him and hope that he goes for 50 plus. Obviously, at 50 plus at his price would be very, very good value. And not to say that he can't do it. Just because it is Denver, I'm not discounting the fact that Donovan Mitchell is an absolutely elite play still. So, Donovan Mitchell is still there. Buddy Hield, I know he had a dud last night. He just couldn't shoot. Nonetheless, he gets a nice pace-up spot here against the Clippers tonight. The Clippers are allowing the 7th most of that shooting guard spot over their last 10. He's also put up 36 or more fantasy points in his last 3 of 5. Well, of course, blowout last night did not help. So Buddy Hield at 6.8. He's had over a 30% usage rate in his last 3 or 4 on the road coming off the bench. So I'm totally fine with Buddy Hield as a bounce back here. Marcus Smart at 6.2 should still be in the rotation nonetheless, even if Tatum comes back or not. 28 or more in his last 3 or 4, 6 plus rebounds, 6 plus assists in his last 3 or 4, 5 steals in his last 5. He continues to be playing really well. Kevin Huerter, I think Huerter. Man, I can't ever say his damn name right. Whatever his fucking name is, Huerter. Yeah, let's go with that. I think he's in a nice buy low spot here at 5.3. The guy's been playing tons of minutes, has played 36 or more in his last 3 or 4, 25 or more fantasy points in his last 3 or 5, 6 plus rebounds in his last 4 or 5. You know, Philadelphia is still without Josh Richardson. I just think it's a good spot here at home for him. He's playing loads of minutes. He usually stays, he stays avidly, consistent. 25 plus, like I said, fantasy points. 5.3, I think, is a fair price and a good spot here. So go with him tonight at the shooting guard spot as a cheapie. Bogdanovic had a nice game last night. He's 4.8 tonight. Put up 35.8 fantasy points. Took, I think, 19 field goals last night. So, again, the Clippers allowing the 7th most of that shooting guard spot. Played 29 minutes last night. Started again for Buddy Hield. So, interestingly enough, if you want to go with Bogdan at 4.8, I'm totally fine. Apologies for the brief pauses, guys. I'm trying to get right this morning. All right, moving over to the small forward spot. We have Kawhi at 10.8, over 64 fantasy points in his last 4, over 60 in his last 5 of 6. Don't really have to tell you guys about Kawhi. We know he's good. However, they could be getting PG back tonight. It looks like he is probable to play, so keep that one in mind. Ben Simmons at 8.9. I know I missed him in the point guard spot. However, Atlanta allowing the 3rd most of that point guard spot. That game is going to be likely the game to stack, I think. I know I say that every time, and it seems like Atlanta always gets blown out, but, the guys that play, that get the most usage, still typically end up doing well. Trae Young, John Collins, Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, those guys, Joel Embiid. So just keep that in mind. It is a bounce back spot here for Simmons. He put up 30.3 fantasy points last game with Embiid coming back. Now, don't get me wrong, Embiid had like a 37% usage rate, just kind of stole the show. Nonetheless, Ben Simmons is too good of a player. He has triple-double potential almost every game, and hopefully with the dud last game, his ownership will be suppressed. So, nonetheless, he still put up 43, 84, 46, 49 his last 4 on the road. So, Simmons has been pretty good. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of those were without Embiid. So, keep that one in mind as well. PG-13 is probable, once again. Not really sure. Want to see the minutes limit. Want to see the kind of restrictions he's getting, if any at all. Moving along, Gordon Hayward at 7.5. Put up 44.8 last game, 35 or more in his last 3. Golden State allowing the 3rd most of that small forward spot over their last 10. Played 37 or more minutes in his last 3. Gordon Hayward continues to play well. Will Barton also, I think, is in a nice little buy spot. He's back at home. He's been on a road trip of his last 5 of 7 games. He gets, the Utah Jazz on a back-to-back here at home. And Utah is allowing the 6th most of that small forward spot over their last 10. I know he's kind of playing a little bit of both, playing the point guard spot right now as well. Nonetheless, it seems like a decently good spot for Will Barton. I wish his price was a little bit cheaper, but I think he's just right to buy back in. Bojan Bogdanovic, again, another 35 fantasy points last night. He was a guy that I was on. 31 or more in his last 5 of 7, 15 or more field goals in his last 4 of 6, 31 plus in his last 3 on the road. Bojan continues to get buckets. Troy Brown Jr. at 5.6 with McRae out has played 32 and 35 minutes in his last 2 games. He's put up 27.3 and 32.8 in his last 2. So, he's in a really good spot. Of course, against Charlotte, we'll definitely be playing some Troy Brown at 5.6. Glenn Robinson 3 at 4.8. I know nobody's going to even look at him tonight and I mean, for good reason. I mean, the Warriors are a big dog here going into Boston. But nonetheless, he's played 31 or more minutes in his last 4 or 5. He's put up 30 or more fantasy points in his last 3 or 4. And he's put up 21, 30, and 34 fantasy points in his last 3 on the road. So something to keep in mind in the back pocket there. If you feel like you need a salary saver, he could be that guy. Chetty Osman at 4.6. Toronto on the second most fantasy points to that small forward spot over their last 10. 22 or more fantasy points in his last 3 or 5. If you think that Cleveland can hang around, then I'd say Chetty might be decently looked there in the lower salary. Cam Reddish at 4.5 has put up 29 or more fantasy points in his last 3 of 5, over 32 in his last 2 of 3. Double-digit scoring efforts in his last 4 straight, 27 or more minutes in his last 6 to 7. He's playing good minutes. He's getting good run at the 3. Cam Reddish at 4.5 at home I think is fine. Kevin Porter got some good blowout run last game. Played 26 minutes, put up 29.5 fantasy points, went 8 of 16 for 21 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal. So if you think that the Cavs don't hang around, then you can play Kevin Porter Jr. at 4K. Moving over to the power forward spot, Pascal Siakam at 8.4, 38 or more in his last 4. Gets a good spot here with Cleveland, over 41 in his last 3 or 4, 33 or more minutes in his last 3 or 4 as well. Pascal Siakam is back to his usual role. You better play him before he goes back over 9K. Kevin Love at 7.2. Toronto allowing the 4th most to the power forward spot over their last 10. 35 or more in his last 2 of 3 at home. Cavs on the back, were blown out their last 2 games. He only played 26 and 24 minutes. Nonetheless, still has a 25.6% usage rate over his last 4 at home. So Kevin Love's decently fine, and his price is fine as well. So Jeremy Grant been playing really well. 6.4K tonight, 33 or more in his last 5 straight, over 38 in his last 3 or 4. 32 plus minutes in his last 5 or 6. So again, with both Mason Plumlee and Paul Millsap out, Jeremy Grant has been continuing to see loads of minutes. So totally fine with Jeremy Grant. Davis Bertans at 6.2. Charlotte allowing the 6th most of that power forward spot, 26 or more in his last 4. This is going to be the chalk game. He's played 27 or more minutes in his last 4 as well. So Bertans has been playing pretty decent since he returned. He's going to get the minutes. He's a nice spark off the bench. So sure. Larry Nance is another guy, again, that has been smashing. 47 in his last game. He's now put up a double-double in his last 4 or 5. As I mentioned above, Toronto allowing the 4th most of that power forward spot, so Larry Nance will absolutely be in play. And then my boy DeAndre Hunter. I know you guys have seen me tweeting my love-hate relationship with DeAndre Hunter, but you can't really knock the guy. He's put up 30 or more fantasy points in his last 2. He's put up 30 or more in his last 4 of 6, and he's played 30 or more minutes in his last 4 of 6 as well. So, he's a total GPP play, but if you feel like it, I'm fine with it. Moving over to the center spot, we have Nikola Jokic at 10-1, 49 or more in his last 7 of 9, gets Utah on a back-to-back. 29% usage rate over his last 5, leads the team. Nikola Jokic has been playing really well lately. Joel Embiid at 9.3. I know nobody's probably going to be exactly comfortable paying 9.3, but nonetheless, it is one of the best matchups on the board. Atlanta allowing the 4th most of that center spot over their last 10. Put up 40 in his return in 26 minutes. If he's going to get 26 plus minutes, can you really be mad at 9.3? I don't think so, because he can literally still put up 50 points against Atlanta. So just depends on how you feel on him tonight. Montrezl Harrell at 6.9. Sacramento versus, those bigs. They're really depleted in the front court. They're starting Dwayne Dedmon. They are on a back-to-back. They got blown out last night. I think Harrell could get a lot of run in the blowout in the event that they get blown out again tonight against the Clippers, which I believe they will. Montrezl Harrell should be your guy. Lou Williams should be your guy. I know I missed him in the shooting guard spot, but that's a correlation play. So if you're going to play Harrell, you have to play Lou. Serge Ibaka at 7-1 with no Gasol. Gasol got injured last game and is out again. Insert Serge Ibaka once again. He was playing over 30 minutes a game. He was playing really well. 35.3 and 43 in his last 2 games. So, yeah, Serge Ibaka definitely back in play against Cleveland. Thomas Bryant was playing 17, 16, 18 minutes, and then, bam, 32 against 32 minutes last game. Like, where in the hell did that come from? 44 fantasy points. Gets a absolutely lovely matchup tonight against Charlotte. Can we trust him to play 30 plus minutes? I don't know. I'm not really sure what happened. I'm not really excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm not really sure what happened with Brooks there, where he's like, oh hey, you're gonna play 18 minutes this game, and then bam, you're gonna play 32 the next. I'm guessing because they kind of ran it back there going into the second half. They were down by like 30 at halftime. The Bucks were smoking them without Giannis, and then all of a sudden the Wizards come back. Bill has a monster game. Thomas Bryant has a monster game. Chris Middleton has a monster game. All the shot goes off. So Thomas Bryant at 5.2. I think he's definitely worth a GPP flyer. I mean, it's kind of hard if he's going to play 30 minutes. I want all the Thomas Bryant at 5.2 against Charlotte. Moving right along now. Last but not least, we have Marquise Chris at 4.5. Played 31 minutes last game. His highest total so far. He's played 18, 21, and 31 in his last three. 22 or more fantasy points in his last four straight. I mean, not the greatest spot here against the Celtics, but, with Cantor out, they are a little bit smaller. So, could see Chris having a decent game at 4.5K. That wraps it up, guys. That's all I got for today. And I apologize. Glad you guys bared through it with me. I know I've got some sinus and allergy issues going on right now. I'm still kind of coming off a virus, so appreciate you guys sticking through with me. Hopefully we all have a really good Thursday, and let's talk about some basketball later, get some lineups built, and let's win some money.